Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. Hi, Jim.
Hi, David. Today I'm going to switch it up on you.
Yeah, because I'm eating a giant burrito.
Because you're shoving a giant burrito, lots of meat in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So let me do this. Are you a regular listener? Why not? Subscribe to the Practical Guitarist on using your chosen podcast app. Take time to put in a review with the service where you found our podcast, like iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Google Play. Of course, it's probably the one you're using right now. Get involved. Find our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Practical Guitarist. You can also find us on Twitter as @PractGuitarist. If you're interested in supporting the show, we have launched a threadless store at practicalguitaristpodcast.threadless.com. And if you'd like to donate money to the show, as always, you could always use Patreon. Our Patreon is available at patreon.com/practicalguitarist. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at questions@practicalguitarist.com. And that reminds me, you're still shoving food in your mouth. Mm-hmm. We had a question on the podcast from a regular listener, or on the Facebook page, actually, podcast Facebook page. And let me get that up here. This was an interesting question. And I'm really bad at getting to groups quickly. It's easier to do on the app, which is weird because most stuff is harder to do on apps.
Yep, they have a good app team over there at Facebook.
Yeah. And they have a terrible team of people letting people know what you're doing. So we had two questions. I thought they were both interesting. The first one I'd like to get to is, so you're using attenuators. What are they? And how do you like them? Okay, well, I used to use an attenuator a long time ago. I had a Fender DeVille, and the DeVille is well known for being really loud. And when I say really loud, I mean that thing, even at 2, would blow your eardrums off in a room. And I used to use a kind of a self-made thing. It was one of those early, DIY devices. That you could find all over the internet. This was the early 2000s, maybe 2000.
Something called an L-pad?
Yeah, that sounds familiar, yeah. It was a long time ago. I used it for a while, and then I heard, and it was kind of true, I noticed that my amp would run really hot, which makes sense. When you're pushing a tube amp loud, it does run hot. And because of that, I was like, I'm not crazy about this. So I stopped using it. And I've not used a brake since, although I know that some people use brakes. Merle just decided your boogie is a good place to sit.
Yeah, it's not Merle. It's Michonne.
Oh, Michonne has.
The burrito is complete, so I can comment now. First off, thanks to Burrito Prio Mexicana for making my wonderful steak burrito with jack cheese. Good stuff. Anyway, moving on. This is not a food podcast, so we're not going to go too deep into that.
Then we shouldn't talk about the fact that I tried a new place for lunch. It's called Freddy's Steak Burgers. Oh. It's kind of like Rally's meets Sonic meets I don't know, like Five Guys.
Right.
It was all right.
Okay. So as far as attenuators are concerned, I've had a totally different experience. I think of the intent. So those really basic circuits, like the things that you see people installing in coffee cans with giant heat sinks and stuff like that, are typically L pads. If they're not done right, if you're not giving the right load to your amp, for example, yes, they will run hot, and you could potentially have serious problems. Most of your designs that you're going to buy from commercial manufacturers are not that way. I know the Marshall Power Break kind of got a bad rap because they had fans on it, and I think they had a bad run of them or something, and some of them were dying. For a long time, people were like, "Oh, attenuators are dangerous." Well, they're really not. I mean, it just depends on how you're using them. First off, a Variac is not an attenuator, which some people will tell you it is. It's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's something to be discussed another day or maybe later, because that is a completely different type of circuit.
Right. So the ones I've got experience with, I've had, what have I used over the years? The Dr. Z Air Brake. I think I got to test out a Weber Mass in a store one time. And those are the two I've got experience with. The Air Brake Light from Dr. Z. And I mean, it's funny because when you buy one, you can see in the vent holes what this thing looks like on the inside. And it's literally just a giant resistor. with taps on it. Okay, so you're basically able to select different levels of resistance for your amp. And
well, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean that, and that was designed by Ken Fisher, and apparently it's supposed to be universal. You're supposed to be able to use it with any ohm amp. It's just the way that circuit's designed. And again, it has beefy, heat insulation and stuff, so you're not going to melt it. The amp, yes, it's going to run just as hot as you would if you had that thing turned all the way up, because your tubes are up. Yeah,
and that's what I noticed. I mean, when I ran the amp hard, and what I would normally do, and this, I know there's other people that do this too, I would put the amp in another room, and I would run the amp loud, and yeah, it ran hot.
Sorry for the foil sound, people.
All right.
So I'm actively actually investigating other attenuators now. I'm looking at the Rivera Rock Crusher Professional, Rock Crusher Recording, I think it is. And the reason I'm looking at attenuators, I live in a condo, right? And so for me to get the sounds I want out of my amps, I think it got to be a bedroom volume. And yes, attenuators crush your tone. For the most part, I have never played one that is transparent. And part of that's because you're not getting the speaker breakup. I mean, that's no speaker breakup. Your tubes react differently if they're not hitting a reactive load. There's all these different variables that go into it. But an attenuator is a useful tool for getting more out of what you can at lower volumes. So when I had my Air Brake Light with my Mark V 25, which by the way needs attenuation, it's 25 watts. That thing will rattle the walls in this house. And the reason why I attenuated is for that, to get the volume down. And when I was using the Air Brake Light with it, I was getting, I would say, about 90% of what I would get when it was turned up. I was pretty comfortable with it. And again, I wasn't pushing my speaker cab super hard with it, etc. It's the kind of amp design where you're using preamp distortion more than power amp distortion, etc. That's kind of its own animal. You get these amps like a Marshall Plexi. I don't really know that you're gonna get as good a result out of a Plexi being turned up as loud and then put through some sort of attenuator that knocks it down to 5 watts of output. Your mileage may vary, so that's where I'm at. I think it's a cool tool. I don't think anybody should be relying on it for their live sound.
Right. I think that it's fine for, like you said, that bedroom practicing type thing, but I would not use it in a live situation.
Well, so live, I've used the brake light to just knock the edge off.
Yep.
But I would not use it like to knock it down so the stage volume's quiet kind of deal. It's fine, I think, to knock off half a dB or something with it, and just get your stuff a little bit more tame. But there's really no reason to. I mean, we're living in the day and age where you can get a 25 watt version of pretty much anything you'd want. Or a 5 watt version in some cases.
Yeah, I was just going to say, 5 watt.
If you need a raging amp sound, get what you bought and we talked about on Monday.
Right.
So.
Right. So, that 5 watt amp. So let's talk a little bit more about that before I get to the next question.
You picked up on that segue.
The 5 watt amp found its way home. Back to its home. I'm gonna admit I liked it.
Yeah, it
Okay?
wasn't. It
First thing I
wasn't
wanna
bad.
say- No, I want to say that it was a really good amplifier. The thing that I took from it is that I liked it. I got a lot of really good usable tones out of it, and I could definitely have used it as a live situation. But I looked at the cost, and I looked at what I had, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to run away from the wagon, as Dave.
Yeah, we were talking about it in the car last night.
Dave is driving the wagon. He's trying to run over me, and I just keep running away. I'm like that dog that's with the chuck wagon in the old commercials.
Yeah, we're having to chase Jim down to get him on the wagon. That's basically the scenario here.
It's the opposite. The wagon is chasing me instead of me chasing the wagon. And I ordered a amp one, so a Blue Guitar amp one. So we'll see what that sounds like next week.
Yep. I'm extremely excited, and I gotta admit, I'm totally jealous, Jim.
With any luck, I'll be using it live Friday night.
You'll be using it live Friday night. I'm pretty convinced.
Not this Friday, next week.
I don't care when you use it. You'll be using it live real soon, and then you're gonna report back to me and be like, David, you need to sell your crap and get one. Because
in September, I will be using it live.
I have a feeling that you're going to be really happy with your purchase. So,
yeah, I've been doing a lot of watching of it. I think that the next, I know that there's a lot of things. I'm a two-tone kind of guy, so I think the 3 buttons on it are fine, at least in the
short term.
Yeah, even in the longer short term. I think the next thing I would do with it is get the IR. If I really like it, I'll get the IR, and then I'll go to the Nano Cab, and I'll get the.
Can we talk about direct outs for a second?
Yeah.
So, I didn't talk about this yet. So we'll start before we talk about direct outs. We'll start with my story about my situation this week. So, of course, I passed on the Friedman. I got a message from my local guitar shop, which is a Good Time Music Store in Carroll Stream, Illinois, and Pat Davey, the proprietor over there, gave me a call, and he didn't give me a call. I actually sent me a Facebook message, which I know he hates using Facebook Messenger, so that always means something to me that he reaches out to me via communication protocol he does not like. So he sends me a message, just, what are you doing? Because he's seen me post somewhere in some group about my situation. He's like, you need to come in here and we need to talk. Oh, please, God, you didn't trade that amp. That's basically what the conversation was like. And I'm like, all right. So I had to take my guitar in to get it set up anyway. So I hauled my butt in there that night, and I was expecting, and this is the credibility of going into this store. I was expecting to get made fun of a little bit and kind of get a little bit of a ribbing. But you know what? Pat was really super nice to me, and he's like, you know what the runt is, right? He said it's the copy version of a Friedman. You know, they've contracted it out cheaply to get it manufactured. He said you open those things up. He's like, it's got the quality that you would expect out of a $600 amp, not a $1,200 amp. And
wow.
And I told him, I said, well, that's my experience too. And he said, well, I'm just saying like the cost of the switches and stuff they use and the choices they made on the inside are not as good as the higher end stuff. So I asked him, I said, well, what would you recommend for what I'm trying to achieve? And I explained to him, I'm doing like some Hendrix stuff, and I'm really looking to get back towards a more British sound, which I don't think the Mark V delivers out of the box very well. And I said, the other thing is the Mark V doesn't do great clean. Well, then he takes me over. He says, this is why, you need to come in. And he takes me over to because he's got a Mark V paired with like every cabinet on earth in there that Mesa makes. And he shows me one that's plugged into a Lone Star. And I, of course, have my guitar with me, so I grab it out of the case and we plug it in. And he just flips the knobs, flips the switches, and he sets pretty much everything at noon. Puts me on the crunch side of clean, and then takes the 5-band EQ and makes a frown basically,
right?
And then walks away, right? And it sounds great. I mean, it's not boomy. There's not too much bass, which is one of the problems I have with my closed back cabs. I love having the projection, but sometimes the bass is a little too much. And actually, when I made this move to the smaller recto cab, the bass probably went down by about 3 dB, and I'm just spitballing on that number, but it sounds like it was cut in half. And I'm fine with it. I'm actually happier with it because it's not as overpowering. I don't have to be as careful with that far left part of the EQ. But now that I've got, he set this up, I did a little bit of tweaking on the EQ, and I got it just a hair bit closer to what I was looking for. And I was like, all right, I'm done. How much of the Lone Star cabs? So he walked me through the pricing, and I haven't bought one yet. I'm going to try to get till June before I buy one. But
right.
He, obviously I am going to buy one at some point. So I took it home, now knowing my tone settings, and this is where we get into the direct out thing. There's a video from Glenn Fricker showing the Mark 525 cab clone direct out. And he basically tore it up and down and said it's shit. I used it the other night and went direct into my recording interface. And I want to kind of give my thoughts in my review on the cab clone that is built into the Mark 525. Because my understanding is it's slightly different than the one you could buy external.
Right.
It is pretty much unusable with my current interface setup on my computer. I'm running a Steinberg UR22 USB audio interface, which is 24-bit, can go all the way up to 192 kilohertz, and I run it in via XLR. I don't really do anything special. The thing that sucks about the cab clone in the Mark V is the output volume of the cab clone is codependent on the master volume of the channel you're on. Now, if I get that master volume over, I guess, be like 9 o'clock, I'm clipping my inputs. And, I mean, that's with my gain turned all the way down on the channel on my interface. So something, like, either the interface is poorly designed, which is quite possible. I've had some problems with clipping with electric guitars without any sort of amplification into the unit, with the thing turned all the way down, set for guitar. So the interface is probably partially at fault here. But I mean, come on, guys. You couldn't put a volume knob for the cab clone on this thing? Like, what the hell? Just a little bitty trim pod or something. So you could at least tweak the amount of level you're getting into your mixer or your audio interface.
I will say this about that's the downside of the Hughes and Kettner one as well, is that the volume that you set your actual volume to controls the output of that. And honestly, that should be more of a coloring thing when it comes to a DI versus a actual volume. You want your volume to be pretty much the same.
Well, it would be okay if I had a pad.
That's what I was going to say, or pad.
So here's the deal. This is why I bring this up. So if you have your amp and you set it up, and my understanding is I'm getting a post power tube feed into the cab clone. Now, if that's not the case, no wonder it doesn't sound that great, because you don't have any of the juiciness that's imparted by the power tubes. So I'm kind of left scratching my head now, because now that I probably have come to the realization that you're not getting any power tube grind coming through the cab clone at all, and that's probably what's going on with the Hughes and Kettner as well. And it just doesn't. It sounds very dry. It sounds timid too. There's no guts to it. I could use the cab clone, and I said this on the podcast before. I could definitely use the cab clone in a live setting as a supplementary thing to a microphone, or as just on its own, as long as I've got the amp loud enough that the audience can hear it, because your brain will fill in the gaps, but it's not usable on its own. I'm sorry. I've heard people say, oh, well, I'm taking my Mark V or my Mark 525, or I'm taking the, what's the other amp they make? Oh, the John Petrucci model, and using the cab clone out directly. I'm not using a cab at all on stage. You guys are crazy. My hat's off to you, because you're doing some crazy EQ stuff, because that's the only way that's working. Honestly, I'm not even sure how. It sounds brittle. I'm not sure how it even cut in the mix. I think it would probably disappear, because there's not enough like mid girth. That's all coming from the power tubes in these amps. So I don't know. I'm not that upset by it. So here's the counter side of this argument. So I take this and I run 4 cable with my Mark V into my Helix, which is on the floor underneath my desk. And then I use HX Edit to actually manage the Helix so I don't actually have to reach down and touch anything. And as I'm doing this, I play around for a minute and I find out, I find a cab I like. And I mean, I'm getting superior sounds out of IRs. So you're telling me you're looking at Blue Box? And I'm like, music to my ears. It makes sense. If you don't have a device like Helix or you don't have a 2 Notes Torpedo, Blue Box is all IR based. And there's some pretty cool IRs in there from what I understand. But so another thing for our listeners, you're using Kettner, which is really interesting because
who built the DI for that?
Yes, that all came. Blue built the original Red Box
Thomas
DIs.
Blue did the DI, so
the Blue Box is a little bit different than the Red Box.
Yep.
In that the Blue Box is IR based, whereas the Red Box is all analog based. You see what I do? You see what I did there? I hope our audience is catching on to this, that there is a Blue Box made by this other company that's sort of a reference to this other box called a Red Box. I don't think it was necessarily him kind of like doing that on purpose. I think it was just kind of a silly, like, here's a coincidence.
Well, I think that, okay, so, all right. If you play a Hughes and Kettner, it glows what color when you turn it on?
Blue.
But they also had a red version.
Yes.
I remember right. And so the Red Box was obviously the emulator out, blah, blah, blah. All right, so if you take that, it makes sense that he probably wanted it named a Blue Box, or he was waiting on the name for the Blue Box. Didn't we ask him about? I don't remember if we asked him about that or not now. But I do know that he was involved with that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So he designed all the Red Boxes, or he's at least involved in that design process.
Right.
I think there's been 5 of them. They've had 5 versions of that thing.
Yeah.
And so the Red Box does it all analog. I think the Red Box is probably better than what's in the Mark V, to be honest with you. And I know a lot of people don't really like the Red Box all that much. So,
yeah. The Red Box is usable. I mean, we padded at the input of the live.
Yeah, if I had a desk, I'd be fine. I wouldn't care. And then I could also use the desk to put some MIDI cue on it to fatten it up a little bit. But so we're talking about this. There was another podcast, 60 Cycle Hub. Of course, I've been on there with Ryan at GearFest. He did a video, and actually I wanted to point this out, not to shame the podcast or anything they did, but just to kind of, open this up for discussion so that everybody kind of understands and is aware of this, because this fits into the attenuator argument. So he did a video talking about the Nux.
Oh, yeah, yep.
The Nux, what do they call that thing? It's Nux or Nux. But it's their version of a the Blue Box, right? And so it has an in and a through, I think, on it. And the idea is that, or an in and a through and an out. And the idea is that you put your cab in here, and then the through, I think, goes to your DI or whatever you're going to use, and then the other end goes into your cabinet. Now, some people were like, "Oh, well, can you use this without a cabinet?" No, you cannot. Same thing with Blue Box. I'll get into some more here in a minute, but if you're using Blue Box with another amplifier other than the Amp 1, you need to check with your manufacturer of your amplifier to see whether it's safe to be able to run it without a cab. Certain amplifiers can do it and certain ones can't. In Jim's case, you and I both have tube amps that have a switch that excludes, it basically turns off the output.
That's correct.
And I know there are other tube amps that can do this. There's a lot of solid state amps that can operate without a cab as well, and many digital amps too. So you just got to consult your manufacturer. Don't buy one of these like speaker emulation devices and think that they're all power soaks, because that's what we're talking about. An attenuator allows you to control the volume. You can attenuate the volume, and it can be used as a power soak. But a power soak literally takes the place of a speaker and makes it safe for your amp, and so your amp sees a load, and you don't blow your transformers or your tubes,
Right.
and also keeps it silent. That's basically what it is.
As somebody who uses it live, it's very, very important that you go to the no speaker, or they also have a speaker emulation setting, whichever one they use. If you leave your cabinet in a setting where it's expecting a load, you can still blow that same speaker out using the emulation output or the DI out, which in my case, obviously, using Kettner's, the Redbox DI. So it's very important for me to put it over there where it has a no load thing. And what I'm sure they are doing is they're putting a dummy load in there.
Yeah, it's exactly what they're doing. Yeah. And in a lot of cases, I wonder if it's actually safer to do that than to run it through a speaker, because that load doesn't have any effect on the transformers. It doesn't flex. If the speaker has something wrong with it, it's not going to cause the load to look funny.
Right.
Because the danger here is not that it's going to blow your speaker. It's going to blow your transformer.
Your amp. Yeah, your transformer tubes. Now the other thing that so the amp 1, I know I can use the emulation and I don't have to worry about that. It doesn't need a load because it's Class D amp.
Right. And so that's why he even says it in the videos for the Blue Box. Like, if you're using amp 1, you don't even have to worry about this, but this is something to be aware of. You're using another high quality tube amp to run through the Blue Box, which a lot of people do. Another Blue Box user is Jennifer Batten. She's the whole system pretty much.
She's got the whole thing.
And she uses I was watching a thing on his YouTube channel where Jennifer Batten basically says, like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, because now I don't have to worry about microphones flaking out. I don't have to haul extra equipment. I don't have to collect microphones. It has great cabinets in it. Some of Thomas Blug's personal collection, like his great cabinets that he feels are the strongest ones he owns. And so I'm stoked on getting one just because Blue Box looks great. To be honest with you. It sounds like we've got an endorsement deal with Thomas Blug, and it's so funny because like Jim hasn't even he doesn't even have it yet. So when he gets this thing from Guitar Center at the end of the week or whatever, we might be back here talking about how crappy it is. Well, I won't, because I've used one. But
I'll be completely honest. Whatever I find. So I'll be testing it. I'll be putting it through all of its stuff. I'll be putting it into my cabinet. I'll be taking it to a gig. I'll be hooking it up with, using the send and return for the effects line loop. I'll be doing the whole 9 yards.
It's such a practical piece of gear. I can't imagine you not liking it, Jim. And I've heard it. And actually, the other guy you could reach out to if you want to get another personal opinion, another guy who's played it is Ryan. Ryan played it when we were at Sweetwater, and tweaking the reverb and all that stuff in it.
So what was it that you said about Ryan with Nux? Because I'm looking at the video. I haven't watched the videos.
No, it was in the thread afterward. Oh, I think he was running it without connecting the speaker or something.
Oh,
I don't think I've actually watched the video yet. I just saw the thread where somebody mentioned like, "Hey, is this a load box?" And then Ryan quickly posted a picture on the video where he says, "Make sure you have a speaker connected." I think he added it to the video. It was
he says with correction. On the video now. And that's
because I don't think he realized that it wasn't a load box either, and that's why I said it's not. I'm not gonna act like that there are people that don't make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but I just want to make sure that like anybody who's listening to this isn't thinking that you get the Blue Box, you don't have to have a speaker on the other end.
You do.
You still do.
You still do. And that's the thing that people, I think that what happens is if you use it, this is the thing to remember in a solid state, I'm not going to say all solid state amps, most solid state amps, you don't need a load. They'll run without the load. And I can tell you this also, with a tube amp, you can turn the amp on without a load. Just don't drive the amp without a load. In other words, don't put a guitar into it or any other signal into it and expect it because even if you're going out of a DI, unless that thing has some sort of setting that dummy loads the output, do not use any kind of input with that for a look, because you will blow it.
If you're not.
And another thing before people go, do not grab, my speaker cable went out. I'll just put a guitar cable in there. Oh. Whoa, no, bad guitarist.
Jim, explain what that does.
Because the speaker cable is a different load than a guitar cable. So what's going to happen is you're literally going to melt that cable and ruin your amp at the same time.
Can I tell some stories? Because everybody's done it at some point, right? When I was a kid coming up, just like starting to learn playing, I was playing with the first band. I don't think we even knew that there was a difference, and we had a cab that we used with regular guitar cables, and we used it for months and didn't have any problems. So your mileage may vary, but I would not recommend it.
No, even with a solid state power amp, you do not want to use a guitar cable. What it is guitar cable is made for a high impedance load.
It's
high
thin.
Impedance. It's thin, so it's not made for all that power. You want a low impedance load, 816 ohm load. What is a guitar?
I don't even know.
Ring out to 500.
Yeah, it's pretty high,
right? 500K or 1 meg, depending on your pots.
Right. It's almost no resistance at all. I mean, it's
right.
And in your I mean, you could tell if you ever deconstructed one, and if you haven't, you got an old one laying around, cut them open, take a look. You'll see they're constructed completely differently. And the thickness of a speaker cable is because it's got to be able to handle heat and everything else if something goes through it. Also, don't lick your speaker cable when it's plugged into your amp.
Jeez. Yeah, I guess you do have to tell people.
Somebody did. All right. So if you knew this, if you didn't know this, you know this now. You can take 2 wires. You can take, if you're buying a speaker used on Craigslist or whatever, and connect it to a 9-volt battery, and it'll make the speaker jump. Right? It'll make a popping noise. Now, that's fine and good. When you lick a 9-volt battery, you can tell if the 9-volt battery is good, right? So if you want to tell if your amplifier is good, you could lick the cable.
No,
but I'll warn you, if you lick that cable, you're gonna go flying across the room because you're gonna get 100 watts of power or whatever your amp is rated at going right across your tongue.
That's not
fun, not wise.
No, do not do that.
A certain amp, not amp builder, but a certain builder in a builder's community had done this and described the event as, I woke up like later. That was basically how I said I woke up later.
It's a wonder he still has his tongue intact.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it. I mean, don't do it. I'm not going to speculate how bad it is, but it's not fun. Let's put it that way.
It's always going to be based on, those who work around electricity know that humidity and a lot of other things do affect the way that your body's going to conduct the electricity. But remember, the higher the load, the higher the power.
Yep. So, case in point, don't lick cables.
No.
Low voltage.
That is not how to test for electricity. I don't know how many idiots I know that lick their fingers and test electricity. That is insane. Not household electricity, but electricity nonetheless. So yeah, it's important when you're working with solid state. Like I said, never use guitar cables in place. And if you've got any horror stories, go ahead and share them with us because usually they're pretty fun. Some don't end as well as others.
No, well, so that's the thing. We've talked on the show before about how there was a time when guitar amps didn't have ground plugs on them, and
there were times when musicians were shocked on stage.
Yeah, well, no, there were times when they get shocked all the time on stage, where the point where like that was not even something you even worried about anymore. Yep. Just like, oh, I got shocked by the microphone again. Oh well.
We didn't stand on rugs just because it was more comfortable.
No.
Stood on rugs to keep ourselves a little bit
insulated.
So Anyway.
Enough safety advice from Dave and Jim.
Yeah, safety advice. Safety advice from Dave and Jim. Our other question on the podcast group was help. John Bott asks, help. Please talk me out of buying a Fender 68 Deluxe Reverb. When have you ever, this goes to anybody, John, I'm not picking on you. I'm just laughing because when have you ever posted on a board and had somebody actually talk you out of buying something?
I did one time. I did one time, and the funny part was I still bought it.
Yeah, see? Or like, a Hughes and Kettner Grandmeister. I'm going to tell you right now, if I had a choice between the two, I love the Hughes and Kettner. That 68 DR is really, really. That's just it. That's a tough one.
So
what do you think?
He's talking about the reissue, the 68 custom, and I've played that amp. I actually shot him out with the 65 reissue, and I almost bought one. God, I don't even know how many times at this point. But the 68 right now, if I was going to buy one, I'd buy a 68. It's more versatile. And I'll say this, like, of the, I would say like kind of blackface style circuits, because the 68 really is kind of evoking the earlier circuits, even though it has the silver face front on it. Honestly, I would probably get the 68. And then nothing against H&K. I think Hughes and Kettner makes some really good stuff. I just think that that's a classic amp that a lot of people, should have in their closet to use for recording, 20 watts is perfect for live.
Yes.
And so for most people who are playing in bars and small clubs, 20 watts is exactly what you want. And that amp gives you what? It gives you the deluxe reverb channel. It gives you it with vibrato and reverb. And then it gives you a Fender Bassman sound on the other channel. So, that covers a lot of ground. I honestly think that's probably one of their most versatile designs they've ever done.
I think the Hughes and Kettner. Okay, so being a Hughes and Kettner fan, obviously. First of all, if I was doing studio thing, I have to agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that there's no doubt that the reverb is an almost necessity, or at least some emulation thereof.
Yeah.
But if I was using it for live, Hughes and Kettner has that 40 watts if you need it. You don't need it as often as you used to, but it's there. You also have 25 and 1 or 0 watts because you can go to the red box out. So it's extremely versatile in that way. And it does have a remote iPad app for control. So as far as a live rig, I'd prefer the Hughes and Kettner.
Yeah, well, so even for me, I'm no stranger to having to have headroom. I still think it's the H&K, the Grandmeister, right? Is that the one we're talking about?
Yeah, that's a Grandmeister.
Is that a combo or a head?
Head.
Yeah,
well, I would go with the head.
Yeah. So that's one point in H&K's favor. It's going to be more gig worthy because if you have a head and cabinet, yes, I know people are probably going to be up in arms about this. Look, if you have a combo where you have the tubes in close proximity to the speaker and the whole thing vibrates, that's bad for your tubes. I don't care what anybody tells you. That's bad for your tubes. So at least if you have the head, there's some degree of separation. Usually the feet provide another degree of separation. So it doesn't vibrate as much.
Right. Or you can put the head, like I do, put the head on a little spot, sometimes a shelf, sometimes on the ground.
Oh, I figured you put it on a platter.
I put the head on a platter. The other thing that I like about the red box on the Grandmeister is they have a noise gate built in. Now, Blug, that's a Blug thing too. That's Tomas Blug as well, because he put that noise gate into the amp on the blue as well. And the reason, or the amp one, and the reason he did that is when you put a noise gate in front of the amp, you lose some of the signal going to the amp.
Right.
So by putting the noise gate in the amp, you can control it when you need to, because you don't really want a noise gate a lot of times on your clean side. And
I don't want it on my gain side.
Yeah, and some people don't want it on the gain side. And sometimes you want a little and sometimes you want a lot. But where it is what's important. And that's what he was saying, is that, you know, when you're taking the noise, where you're taking the noise away and how it affects the amp is what's important.
I think the bigger question here and what we should be stepping back and talking about is, okay, these are two fundamentally different amps, right? You have one that is a modern do-it-all.
That's correct.
And you want to have one that is a vintage clean machine.
Correct.
And I don't want to say clean because it's got a basement channel on it too.
Yeah.
So what are you after?
Basement, right. And it's really, that's what I was going to say.
This is a weird comparison.
Comes down to what do you want? Because they are nothing like each other. Oh, and you've got the MIDI control as well on the Red Box. You're not going to have that on the but that might not matter. And, you know, that's really up to you when it comes to that, John. It's something that I would have to sit down and I would say, okay, what is going to work for me? And if I was the one using it, I go for versatility on stage. I love versatility.
Sure.
Some people want simplicity. There are those two things. And I know one thing. After what you said about the Friedmans, so I told you I went to Guitar Center, tried those Friedmans.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now the Friedman wasn't bad though. It wasn't too bad. I hooked it up to a Mesa Boogie.
Which amp are we talking? The Runt?
The Runt.
Because I think it's the Runt specifically. I didn't have the same problems with the Pink Taco.
Yeah, no, there was a Pink Taco and there was a Runt, and they had a BE.
And were they all in clearance?
Yes.
The Runts? Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And so I took the Runt and I put it on a Fender or a Mesa Boogie 1x12. They call it an oversized cab.
Yeah. Right.
It's a big cab. I mean, it looks like a 2x12 cab.
It's a wide body.
Yes, but it's called wide body. Anyway, I put it on there and it wasn't bad. It was actually pretty. I cranked it pretty good.
They're good. They're good sounding amps, but the ones I played, at least one of them, the tubes was bad in it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So there were issues with the amp itself, the head itself, that told me I don't know as I'd want to spend $1,100 or whatever it was on those things. I just can't see putting that kind of money into it.
Right. Well, I think they're severely overpriced, and it's not even a function of, you know, what the parts and stuff in them are. If your shtick is I do hand wired turret boarded amps,
right,
starting at $1,500. That's cheap, by the way. That Pink Taco, if that wasn't a one-trick pony, that would be an incredible value. But it is a one-trick pony. It only does, you know, the kind of vintage dirt sound. And so if you were to go into the store and say, get one of these, you know, you'd be better served than saying, hey, I want to spend $1,100 on the Runt, which is kind of a knockoffy sort of thing. And that's what gets me, is the construction's totally different on those amps. They don't tell you that. It says on the tag, made in USA, and I'm sure it is, but where'd the board come from?
Right. And we all know the board came from overseas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that for certain, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't give you a whole vote of confidence that they can say, okay, we were able to knock off a little bit of money to go to a board.
So where'd the board come from? Where'd the components come from? Where did the wire come from? I mean, you could go down to any kind of thing like that.
Well, my question is, so if you go to a boarded amp, right, is the difference in cost between that and a turret boarded amp really only like $400?
Yeah.
That does not sound right to me. There's something wrong with that equation. I think those amps they're significantly more expensive than they should be.
Yeah.
So
I have to agree with you. And I think that's going to start easing itself, because You're seeing them go on special. I think there was a time when people were like, "Oh, Friedman, it's so different. It's not the same as everybody else. I've got something new."
Honestly, you know what I think the Friedman sound is, and I know people are going to piss all over me. I think the Friedman sound is a creamback. I think their use of creamback speakers in their amps has given them that signature status. It's a very warm, low mid, like pushed kind of sound, and that speaker suits that perfectly. But I think if you were to take like the Pink Taco and run it through a V30 cab, you're gonna get a completely different sounding amp.
Well, I can tell you this: if the wide body is still there when next week when my
you'll try them both. You'll try them both.
I'm going to try them both. Yeah, all right. I'm going to see what it goes to.
Yeah. So I think they were both creamback because they had the Pink Taco cab there, and I ran ahead through that. And honestly, the Pink Taco and the Run sounded so much alike. I honestly could buy either one. Didn't care. If they were reliable, I would have bought a Runt, but I'm glad I didn't. In retrospect, my Mark V actually, with the settings that were revealed to me, it sounds significantly better than a Friedman does to my ears. So
I'm just glad you're stuck with your Mesa.
I am too, actually. I don't feel as stupid now about it either, because it's like I can be unorthodox with this amp and try different things, and if it sounds good, just do it. I get stuck in a rut. That's what I'm saying. Like, I get stuck in a rut where it's like, oh, this is the way that everybody else uses it, so I should use it that way too. Instead of sitting there and thinking to myself, well, no, I need this sound. Like, this is what I should do. I just take what I got and make more of it. And that's part of the reason why we entered into Year of No Gear, was to learn how to use what we have and use it better.
That's what I'm doing right now.
I always felt like when I was a kid growing up and I didn't have money for gear, like I knew how to use what I had very, very well, because like I didn't buy a distortion box every month. I had one distortion box for like 2 years. You know, you figure every little nuance of that thing out in those 2 years, and the longer you have it, the better you get with it. And with cheap stuff, like or what we do now is buying and flipping, or buying and selling, or whatever you want to call it, horse trading. You never really get a feel for what the thing is capable of. You kind of know, but you don't really know.
So I have to ask you, if when it comes to horse trading, since we're moving in another subject,
sure.
Do you, when you look at horse trading, I'm trying to ask this a nice way.
You can ask it in not a nice way, so it's fine.
All right,
it's me, Jim.
You ever feel like when somebody's doing horse trading that they're just being an asshole? I mean, honestly,
I have had many dealings with many hipster people trying to sell equipment over the years, and I'm not generalizing it as to hipster people. I'm just saying, like, there's a one specific case that brings to mind, and that guy was a hipster. And we bought a deluxe reverb, and I think I've told this story. No, it wasn't a deluxe reverb. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, that we bought a Hot Rod Deluxe off a guy in Joliet. For where I'm at, Joliet's a 45-minute drive. So we drove down there. I met the guy in a parking lot. I'd already bought the amp through Reverb. In the amp listing, he said the Reverb does not work on the amp. Half the Hot Rod Deluxes in existence, the Reverb does not work. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll get it fixed, no problem. I can probably just replace the tank, or I can see what's going on with the relays on the board and fix it. So I get the Deluxe, or I get the Hot Rod Deluxe. I keep saying Deluxe Reverb. I get the Hot Rod Deluxe. I get it home. I plug it in, put the cable in it. Nothing works on this amp. The only thing that works is the gain channel. No, it isn't even the gain channel. It's the clean channel. The gain channel is completely hosed. The clean channel, only the volume knob works, and it's not nearly as loud as it should be. And then the like everything else in the amp is just toast. The reverb, forget about it. But yeah, no, it doesn't work. He was right. The standby switch doesn't work. So I ended up having to take it and get it all repaired. It was actually, we bought it for a friend, but it was just a whole thing. And yes, horse trading, that guy was trying to get me to pay top dollar for his trash. And that's what kills me, is that you will get people that will think that their shit is worth more money than it is. And you will get people who know what their shit's worth, who are still going to try to do that to you. because they're in it for the deal of a lifetime. Those are the kind of people that there are podcasts and there are people and there are groups and there are attitudes in some of these places of people like this. And you see it all the time. And I'll pay fair value for something. I don't buy things to flip them usually. I have done it before, but I'm not the guy that's going to buy something, at a reasonable price and then charge a hell of a lot more for it. So,
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and I'd rather give someone a fair value for their item, and I'd rather feel like I got a relatively good deal, but I don't want to feel like I ripped them off. And I think that's a problem sometimes, that people have that expectation. So, all right, the next thing we had on the group was after we posted our last Get Good, Jason Fuzzmonger pointed out that you pronounced Lydian wrong, and I didn't say anything during
Lydian.
Yeah, I didn't say anything during the podcast.
Lydian, just take it and shove it. Why are we even addressing this?
I just thought it was funny. But he also pointed out that he tried to watch
smiling,
TTK's,
Jason.
He tried to he is. He tried to watch TTK's video and how does someone make such great gear sell like shit so consistently.
Yeah, I mean, I can mispronounce things, but at least I know what the hell I'm doing with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel much better thinking about that. And that was a good way to phrase that. Give me the horse shit up front, so then you can do the stuff that's going to make me angry, right. And then give me the thing that makes me, there's validation,
Yep. Because I just tell you, I just thought that was a pretty funny thing.
Listen, for those of you who know the show and have been following us for a while, I can get very, very angry. And I did not get very, very angry when I read that. I actually smiled and said, "Yeah, you caught me. I said Lydian, and I've been saying it for a while." But you know what?
Over and over, and I was like, maybe I'm wrong.
Can we talk? Well, that's how this happens, Jim. So I saw a video with a famous guitar player who will remain nameless at this point, who was also using the term Lydian rather than Lydian. And I have used Lydian since I started playing guitar. The first time I saw it, I said, "Oh, that's clearly Lydian." Yeah. Mixolydian. I would not call it Mixolydian. What the hell? Mixolydian. So I hear this guy pronouncing it, and it just kind of rubs off, and then you start using that pronunciation too. It sucks. Don't do it.
Yep. And so another guy, Jay Wells, he said, "Friends, musicians, good people, lend me your innate abilities for an unbiased opinion," which we know there's no such thing as an unbiased opinion.
I am the most biased person here.
We all know that every opinion that is given here is going to be a biased. But anyway, I've been wanting an Eddie Van Halen signature. This is Jay Wells. I've been wanting an Eddie Van Halen signature series for a long time. I know some will say, why? Or not another one. But I love his sound. Not so much the technique, although he is a guitar god. I'm paraphrasing. I'm more into the Van Hagar era sound. I know that's mostly Music Man, but I'm...
Oh, I forgot about that part of that post. Van Hagar. Ugh.
Ugh. Yeah, me too. And I am debating on one of the specials, but which to go through, the PV or the EVH. I'll tell you right now, PV.
Yeah, I like the PVs. And I mentioned it in the thread.
I'll tell you why, Jay. The PV... this is my opinion. I played them all. I played the PV. I played the Music Man. I played the EVH recently, and the PV is the best value because PVs are the cheapest, and it's the exact same damn guitar. It's the exact same guitar.
Yeah, they didn't do much. I mean,
wood, everything.
Yeah, the only thing they did is they changed the body shape a little bit, and honestly, the PVs. I've owned one. I actually really, really liked mine when I had it. And I think it's actually on some of the recordings I've been working on because I didn't have that guitar that long ago. Right. I got rid of that when I got my SG. I didn't need another double humbucker guitar. But that being said, Bird's Eye maple neck, great pickups. The body was wonderfully finished, and it wasn't an expensive guitar. I think I paid $700 for it. If you want to go get a value, that's where you start. Because for $1,000, you can get fancy top. You can get a Floyd Rose trem. You're gonna get I think they're all flat tops, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because I know the EVHs, there's some curved top ones now.
Yeah. You got to remember that. Okay, so the EVH is supposed to give you that feel of that era of the guitar, right? And honestly, there was no carved top guitar that he was using at that time, unless you count, the once in a while he used a Gibson on this or that. He was usually using Kramer stuff and Fender stuff and Jackson stuff that he was mishmashing together. Eddie Van Halen was famous for that. And I'll say another thing. If you're thinking about the amps for that type of sound, the PV5150 is still the best value, and it's still the best amp in that category. I prefer it to the new EVH amps. I do.
Yeah, or the 6505. The 6505.
The 6505, which is the exact same amp. They just had to change the name.
We're gonna have to disagree on that one because I think the EVH, I guess it's the EVH3 or whatever, the 5153 from EVH. Yep. I like those amps.
But if you go ahead.
Well, so let's back up. So both of those amps are copies of a Soldano.
Yes.
And anybody who tells you otherwise is full of shit. Because what he did was he basically sent a Soldano to PV and said, I want an amp that sounds like this. So they were reverse engineering a Soldano to see how it ticked and then trying to recreate that on a budget. And Dan Brown was involved in this process. He doesn't out and out say that they were copying it, but he does admit that they had a Soldano sent to them as a hey, I want something that sounds like this kind of thing. These that would be SLO 100. And then so the EVH3 is very much the same thing. I think it's got a little bit more Bogner texture to it, but basically it's a modded Marshall with, lots of gain and tone shaping.
Now, folks, I will preface the rest of David's comments with David loves Marshall sounds. So since the EV3 is more like the Marshall.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
He's going to give it that.
More in that territory.
Right, where I will say that for me.
They're both great.
They are. But I'm going to say two things. One, I was first introduced to Soldanos personally when I played with a band in 2003, 2002, 2000, might have been even 2001. But anyway, somewhere in 2001, 2003 area. I was playing with a guy, had a Soldano, loved it, loved the Bogner, loved the Soldanos. Mm-hmm. High gain amps, very high gain amps. 5150 came out in the 2004 era, right? Was it?
I want to say 5150 was late 90s. The 5152
was it?
Came out around 2002, 2001.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. And when I first saw one of those in action, which that might be why I thought it was 2003 timeframe. I was like, yeah, that's got it. That's nailed it. They nailed it.
The only problem I have with the 5150 line is they're all about gain and they seem to lack character to me. But I have heard many a metal band do some really fun stuff with them. So
I was in a band. We were doing covers, of course, of the time. We were doing a lot of classic rock covers and everything else. And the guy was playing a Ibanez Wizard 2 neck. I don't remember what the Ibanez model was. I don't think it's really that important, but he was always about the neck.
Yeah.
He didn't care. I don't think the model of the guitar he even cared, but it was all about that Wizard 2 neck. He loved that Wizard 2. He had two of them, both of them with the trem, locking trem. And he had a 5152 head and cabinet. It was a monster. It was probably one of the best sounds, and he had very minimal pedal board. He had a boost and a reverb or delay, digital delay. That was it. And of course, a tuner.
Yeah, I mean, and nowadays, so here's the reason why I'm not like super big on either of those amps. Nowadays, there's such a plethora of great sounding Marshall-esque amps or high gain amps in general. I mean, you've got Mesa makes 4 or 5 different models that'll do that. And you've got Marshall, everything they've got now has a high gain channel on it. You've got
I don't think Marshall does high gain as well as other people do.
No, they don't. They don't. Rivera has, its whole set, and like there's just all these different companies you can buy from. I'm just scratching the surface. We talk about Bogner and Soldano and
Uber,
I mean,
because Wagner's Ubershaw series. And,
no, screw the Ubershaw. I want an ecstasy. Nobody wants a fucking Ubershaw. Yeah, I want to shit in my pants. The Ubershaw is about making you shit in your pants. It's about accurately recreating the brown note.
Brown sound. It's literally going after the brown sound. But if you're a metal guy, I say metal. I'm not my metal. My metal is Iron Maiden.
If you're playing down-tuned guitars,
yes,
and you're looking for an amp that can make your bass player pissed off, Ubershaw. Yeah.
And your audience shit its pants.
Yes.
Then you're looking at Ubershaw.
No, actually, I really like the Ubershaw sound, but it's just not something I'd be after ever. So, I mean, I'm not saying, like, don't buy an Ubershaw or not. Framus makes amps, too, and they make, like, the Cobra and stuff, and those sound pretty good. I
think Fuzzmocker would like
I'm just going to stop.
Diesel.
I mean, there's so many damn amps. Who's it? Eric Eckel or somebody like that plays Diesel?
What about Egnator? What did you think of Egnator?
I didn't think much of Egnator. I think Bruce Egnator, I think he's a great designer. I think he's built some really cool stuff. He's part of the brains behind the Randall module system, which, by the way, I was listening to the Line 6 podcast today, and Smashing Pumpkins, who are on tour right now, are using the Egnator module systems, Randall heads, with modules and helixes.
Yeah. I'm kind of looking forward to catching that tour.
I wish I could go. I think I already missed the date.
Well, I just saw, let me tell you something while you're looking up some stuff. I just saw.
Maybe you should tell us about that. Tell us about that concert you just went to.
Journey and Def Leppard. And let me tell you something. Both bands, incredible. You got to give Def Leppard the fact that other than one member who has passed away, that's an original band right there. That's everybody that, you could argue that Phil Collins joined them a little bit later, but that was after Into the Night, so it's not that big a deal. He's pretty much been there for all the hits. And as far as Journey went, they've gone back they got Steve Smith back on drums. They've got, Dean Cain on keys. And of course, Neil, on guitar. And Ross Valerie back on bass, after he had left for a while there when Randy Jackson replaced him. So I loved it. The sound was great, but let me tell you something. We all have those times. The guitar player for Def Leppard stepped on his boost pedal, or his tech did. And let me tell you something. The whole place just, because he had he was playing a Les Paul Gold Top with P90s, and that thing just was way too fucking loud. It just screamed. But he tamed that bitch down, rode it through, and then when he was done, I think he was enjoying the heck out of that feedback, because his turned around to that amp behind him, to his cabinet. He just let that thing ring like crazy. My ears are still ringing 2 days later.
As you're talking, I'm looking to see if I can get tickets for Smashing Pumpkins in Indiana.
Yeah. And no, that's fine. And let me tell you, Neil. The thing about Neil Schon, I love Neil Schon. I really do. His wife was there, dancing on the side of the stage. His trophy, or his wife, and
he's a wonderful human being. Let's just put it that way. Let's talk about him trying to throw Santana out of Santana.
He was a kid. He was 18 when he did that?
And he was already a jackass with no respect for his elders.
He had no Gina. He doesn't care. He just doesn't care. The guy kills me. He reminds me sometimes, like, remember when Eddie Van Halen was announcing that they got the guy from More Than Words there? What the hell was the name of that band? With Nuno Betancourt.
I wish
that singer. Remember when he joined them for that one album and it was awful? And he was like, "Oh yeah, we're so excited."
It wasn't Nuno Betancourt, but it was a guy from Gary Sharon.
Gary Sharon, that's it.
Who can forget that name?
And Extreme. That was the band I was trying to think of. They got the Extreme singer there, Gary Sharon, in there. Oh, good. First of all, they wore the right clothes for the video because they were dressed kind of like clowns for that thing.
Yeah.
Or at least jesters, right? Remember that? And I remember Eddie coming out and saying, "Yeah, it's so good. We were really vibing with this guy." And I was like,
Can I tell the real story here?
Yeah, Eddie. Yeah, go ahead.
So Eddie comes out and says, and this is the last thing we're going to talk about before we wrap up here. But Eddie comes out and he says, we all know Eddie's batshit crazy at this point anyway. We've read the last Rolling Stone interview. Eddie comes out and says, Gary Sharon is the best singer we've ever had. And this is the voice of this band, and we're so glad that we found this guy and that he just fits our model, and he's very professional and works with us and all the things we need. But the funny thing was, Eddie had said the exact same thing before about Sammy Hagar. So Eddie's basically just saying, we got a new singer. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's just, he ended up looking like a buffoon because the fans did not buy that record at all. They were like, this is bullshit. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, that was the worst record. And, if you get the double greatest hits, not one song from that is on there.
No.
I want to get two more points in before we go. John Osborne said he got the MXR Sugar Drive. Great pedal. I wonder if it's sweet. Jay Wells asked if it was sweet. Get it? Anyway, the Sugar Drive. Hey, come on. It was a good joke. All right. So, no, it wasn't. It was a terrible joke. Okay.
It's like that pea melter.
Which we're not going to talk about. Exactly. Yeah. So
I'm talking about plastic. What are you talking about?
The plastic melter.
Yes.
That's what happens when you
put your plastic.
That's right. When you put your the wrong cable into the amp, you're going to burn plastic. Believe me. The other thing that I want to talk to is Eddie Van Halen. Remember when Eddie slammed on bass player Michael Anthony?
Yeah.
Remember when he slammed on him, and then
what the hell
Hagar jumped up to his defense, and I mean Hagar was willing to burn a pile of bridges to go, fuck you, Eddie.
No, and he should have. And the thing is,
he did.
Michael Anthony was more important to Van Halen than Eddie Van Halen was. I mean, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart in the sense that Michael Anthony was a songwriter that was responsible for a lot of the hits.
Yep.
And so you're pissing on him, and everybody who knows anything about this is just like, shut your fucking mouth.
Right.
Like, so people, in Van Halen history, they make the Gary Sharon record, right? Which I call Extreme Halen. And then they go on for another 10 years with nothing. They don't do anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So then they drop this Best of Both Worlds record or whatever with is that what they called it? Best of Both Worlds or something like that?
With Hagar.
Came
back. Or I mean, not Hagar.
Hagar. Sammy Davis Jr. No, David Lee Roth, okay?
Yes.
When David,
same age.
Right. When David Lee Roth came back. And that album was not well received.
No.
And it's because they burnt their bridges with fans.
Yeah.
Like, this would be a lesson to any aging rock group that's like trying to reinvent themselves. Don't do what Van Halen did. Do what the Rolling Stones did, which is stay true to your identity.
That's what I was talking about when it came to Def Leppard and Journey. Let me tell you something. That place was rocking. Everybody was on their feet. And the thing that pissed me off when it came to Van Halen was, we're bringing David Lee Roth back. I was like, yes. Because that was, to me, that was the voice of it. No offense to anybody that's a Sammy Hagar fan. I love Sammy Hagar for what Sammy Hagar does.
I like Sammy Hagar's music. I don't like his music with Van Halen.
Right. I was not a Van Hagar fan. But everybody's got their thing. Bon Scott.
Sure.
Brian Johnson. That
I got you.
But then, hey, you know what? We got David Lee Roth back. Let's kick Michael Anthony out of the band. Because I'm going to bring my kid along.
Yeah.
And my kid can outplay Michael. I don't give a shit if your kid can play standing on his head. I don't give a shit. He is not Van Halen. Your fucking kid is your fucking kid. You want to go tour with your kid? Go tour with your kid and do the Van Halen show of just your name. But don't tell me that he is the freaking sound of Van Halen. He's not. And
You know what gets me? So
pissed me off.
All of the insanity in that group is centered around Eddie.
Yeah.
Alex, his brother, has got to be sitting there going, man, why do I let this guy speak for me?
You never hear Alex.
No,
never.
Never.
He's an underrated drummer.
He's one of the best. If Alex Van Halen wasn't even in that band, Eddie would be off in left field playing some fucking crazy shit that doesn't keep time.
Yeah.
Eddie cannot keep time. He cannot. Listen to him do anything where there's no drums.
Right.
It sounds awful.
He's just out there. I mean, that his brother and Michael Anthony were a clock ticking. I mean, they were just a machine.
Yeah.
And they were everything. They were the all the harmony came from that. And when Hagar was right when he said Eddie didn't play the same chords twice. It's all well and good when you're comping.
Yeah.
But try to be somewhere in the melody because you're not there. and that's not saying I'm a better guitar player than Eddie Van Halen.
No,
I'm
hell
saying
no.
I'm a better song. What I'm saying is that I think he's way overrated when it comes to guitar players. Matter of fact, I'll say this: Neil Schon is one of the most underrated guitar players I've ever seen or heard of. And the only reason is because everybody's it's ego that puts him where he is.
Jim's laughing because I have a look on my face right now like Neil Schon.
I'm not saying
look, I know how good Neil Schon is as a player. He is good, but I wouldn't say he's better than Eddie. Unfortunately.
No. I'm saying he's underrated.
Sure.
You never hear about him. You never hear about him in these lists. You
don't hear about him nowadays, but when they were in their heyday, Neil Schon was on the top of everybody's list.
Yeah.
So
could be. Could be.
He's playing with Santana. That's all I can say. Hey
guys, tell us some of your favorite guitar players. I mean, it's a huge thing to when you start talking about this because everybody's like, oh yeah, well you think you're better than them? No, I never said that.
All right.
I said that we're
I have one more thing to add about out of this episode.
Yes.
There was a thing that went down in the Helix group the other day. That was it was kind of funny, and I'm getting raked over the coals for what I did, and I don't really give a fuck. Okay, I say that with the utmost intent. Somebody posted a picture or a video of one of these Prodigy kids, right?
Oh yeah,
a kid that's really really good on guitar, and it's always a kid sitting in his bedroom in front of his computer. Now we're talking this kid's like 8 or 9, right? He's sitting in his bedroom in front of his computer with the studio monitors and just going ape shit. Like really good guitar player, right? But the way I always look at these is I'm like, okay, so you can play to a backing track, which is basically a metronome. Like, all right, great, wonderful. Now let's see you get up in front of a group. Let's see how you can handle playing with other musicians.
Right.
And very rarely do you see like that. Okay. So that's what I commented. I basically said, I'm sure this kid is very good. He has a bright future in music. He just needs to cut his teeth with real musicians. And until I see that, I'm not worshiping at this kid's altar. Immediately, people start jumping my shit. And they're like, you're so negative. Listen, I just said the kid's extremely talented. What the fuck? Can you not read? Are you blind?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll put it in Braille if I have to. I'm being very positive, which is this idea that this kid could improve. He could really be something, and I hope he is. And the reason why is because we need young guitar players. We still need these kids doing this stuff. Okay?
Absolutely.
So I was flabbergasted that people were thinking I was being so damn negative. So I went off on it, and I was like, listen, I was like 50% of the guitar players in this group and 50% of the guitar players on the internet are probably guys that never leave their bedroom. Okay?
Right.
So they have no right to basically say, oh, well, this kid's an excellent musician. Well, based on your standard, but that's not being a musician. Okay, being a musician is being able to get on stage with people, to have good communication with people, to stay on the road with people and not kill each other, to know what you have to do to get the job done. Okay,
right.
Getting the job done is not taking your guitar out of the case, putting the strap on, and playing the chords. It's all the stuff that before and after that. It's a big bookend.
I'm going to add to that and say all these folks that post these, put these posts up of, oh, look at this killer guitar player, or look at my cover of blah, blah, blah. And they're playing with the original music.
No.
Not even playing to a track with a removed guitar part. They're playing with the original guitar.
Well,
I don't know what you're doing. What's you and what's them?
So in this case, that was not what was going on. He was playing a composed piece of music that he had written.
Right.
And the funnier thing was, somebody said, go look at this kid's YouTube channel, because they were saying, this video has gone viral, but actually he's got a lot of videos on YouTube. So I went and watched some of them, and there are some of him performing with the band. Right. He's from somewhere in Asia or India. I'm not sure which. That region of the world. And his band was kids that are, he's probably 8 or 9. The band's probably 12, 13-ish, each kid. Yep. And they were horrible. And I'm sorry. I get it. Like, they're kids. And so I was there when I was a kid playing, at 14, 15 years old. But I never had bands that sounded that bad. And it's not that the kid was at fault. Actually, the kid was the only part that I wanted to listen to.
Right.
But they had a drummer who couldn't keep time. They had a singer who couldn't tell what the fuck she was doing.
Yeah. So she was a typical singer. Couldn't find the key. Didn't know where to come in.
So long story short, look, I'm not attempting to be negative. I just want to make sure that the stereotype that's being portrayed by the bedroom players is that if you're constructive, you're being negative. No, I'm being constructive. I want people like this to play. Like, you don't understand it. And it's just something that doesn't come across on the internet. Like,
no, it's hard.
They don't get the inflection of like, hey, this kid's really good. But so that's the other part. As a part of this conversation in this thread, people are like, I bet you can't play like him. My wife laughs because she read one of those over my shoulder. She goes, no, he can.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I actually could probably outplay him.
Yeah. And that's not what you're trying to do. That's not even what you're trying to say.
That never even occurred to me. I was like, no, I don't even care. Like, I'm not comparing myself to somebody else. I'm a musician. You're a musician. We don't compare ourselves. This isn't a competition.
Right. And it's not. We've said that before. Okay, one more thing. Greta Van Fleet. Good, bad, or indifferent?
Led Zeppelin.
Bad. I'm going to say bad. Bad. It's not Led Zeppelin. They're obviously trying. Okay, so you asked me about
what I said was Led Zeppelin. I'd rather listen to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Okay, I got you now. When I was at the concert, the only thing about Journey is right now is that Arnell, who is an incredible singer, people don't think that I don't recognize.
Yeah, he is great.
A double negative there, but I recognize 100% how tough that is. He does that night after night. That kid has so much energy. He's so incredible. I say kid. He's only a few years younger than I am.
And most of the fans in the audience are looking at him going, what the hell is he doing here?
Right. But Greta Van Fleet reminds me of him. He is singing out of his natural it's not his first language. English is not his first language.
Correct.
So when he sings, he's really not. There's sometimes you can go, okay, he's just doing notes here. He's not really feeling this song. He doesn't know how to because he really doesn't understand the message. And it's okay. He didn't grow up in America. He didn't grow up under Circus Life, another big top world. But he's delivering the notes, and it's incredible. I get that feeling with Greta Van Fleet. It's like, and believe me, I don't know. I wouldn't know them if I walked into them in the grocery store. I don't know what they look like. I just don't care. Mm-hmm. But I've heard them, and I'm like, meh. Okay, it's a guy trying to sound like Robert Plant, trying to do a different song.
Yep.
But I get nothing from that music. I don't get anything from the vocals. I'm not getting the feeling from the guitar. I'm just like, okay, Yep, there's some Jimmy Page riffs.
Actually, when you said Greta Van Fleet, you know what I should have said?
Yeah, what?
Rival Sons.
Oh. Remember, there was a band, you may or may not remember them, in the 90s called Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
They were another, listen to them, they're going to be another Led Zeppelin.
There's not going to be another Led Zeppelin. Music has moved on.
Stop trying to do that.
Yeah.
Do your own thing. Now they're out there going, we were never trying to be Led Zeppelin. You know?
Bullshit.
Bullshit. You were not. I just
sing just like Robert Plant.
Yeah, I sing
play
like
guitar
Robert
just
Plant.
like Jimmy Page. And
yeah, I'm slinging a Les Paul low, and I'm playing exactly the same riffs as him.
You could artificially be different. You know, you could make a decision. Okay, we sound like these guys. We got to change it up.
Right.
They never did that.
Just admit, hey, we did that. We got our name out there. Now we're going to do our own crap, and you're going to hate it. I mean,
I don't know.
Just saying.
All
right, Rebecca Black.
That's the end of this. We're done. Stick a fork in it. It's an hour and 20 minutes. We were going to go 45. All right, Jim. You have successfully read the entire Facebook group at this point.
Yes.
So, I've been David.
I have been Jim.
And we were the Practical Guitarists.
That's correct.